I am Nina Biffinger. All of you really know that, but you can, for those that don't know me, I am your trusted real estate expert with Location Real Estate. I really welcome you, and I'm so happy you're here for today's local spotlight. I really believe as a community that we need to come together, support small businesses, and celebrate them, and the nonprofits as well, especially during these unusual times right now, which is why I started hosting this a couple of times a month to spotlight different nonprofits and small businesses. Today's organization, CASA, is one that is so near and dear to my heart, and I might actually tear up at some point. Not just because I am passionate about kids and I really want them to thrive, but I also was a volunteer CASA at a point in my life, and I really saw firsthand the impact that the organization has. We have invited Andrea. I am so grateful that Andrea Tagtow is with us today. I actually met her at a Colorado Women's Chamber luncheon, and my ears perked up when she introduced herself, and I instantly knew that I needed to be connected with her. Andrea is the Director of Development and Community Relations at Advocates for Children CASA. She has been with the organization for 7 years and was actually a CASA volunteer as well prior to joining the staff. Andrea is extremely passionate about the mission of Advocates for Children CASA. And this organization, if you are not familiar with them, they recruit, train, and support community volunteers who advocate on behalf of children in the children welfare system. Court-appointed special advocates, or CASA volunteers, provide the court and other responsible parties with independent and objective information regarding the safety, permanency, and well-being of the child or children. So Andrea, I know that you're excited to share more about Advocates for Children CASA. Tell us first what it is that drew you to, or what keeps you, that ignites your passion about the organization.
Yeah, thank you so much, Nina. Thanks for having us here today. What drew me to and ignites my passion? I was also a CASA volunteer before I became a staff member, and I knew that I wanted a career in child welfare. I had volunteered in high school, actually, starting in high school and then as well in college. I had volunteered with a couple different organizations, thought I wanted to be a social worker. And so I was actually looking for jobs in social work and came across a Google search of Advocates for Children CASA. And I had sent in an email inquiry that afternoon and was in volunteer training like 48 hours later. Like, it was such a natural fit. And that was, I've been a staff member for 7 years and I was a volunteer before that. That was a long time ago, it seems like. And I think what really just first appealed to me and keeps me going is the work we do can be really, really heavy. And I'll talk a little bit about that for the next few minutes, but can be really heavy, but the impact that one person makes with a child, like, that is how I feel like there will be a difference made. You can't take on the whole child welfare system. You can't take on child abuse and neglect as a whole, but you can work with one child, and these relationships are so powerful, and they're lifelong a lot of times. So it's a really awesome program. I am so excited to share more with you all today. And I also have Josefina Milliner, who's our executive director, on the call. So she might be popping in along the way. We would both love to answer any questions. Like Nina said, please throw questions in the chat, or I don't even mind if you throw up a little hand or just ask questions along the way. I really want this to be informative and educational and hopefully interesting. So I know a couple folks are on mute, but I am curious if there's anybody who has heard of CASA previous to this call. I think, Kelly, it might have been you who was saying that you were interested in learning more. Yes. Oh, an enthusiastic yes from Marcy. That's exciting. Cool. Well, thank you. Is anybody a CASA volunteer by chance besides Nina? Just like to know if we have any of those folks in the audience. Okay, cool. Well, for those of you who might not be as familiar, Advocates for Children CASA is one of almost 1,000 CASA agencies across the country. We are in every single state besides North Dakota. In Colorado alone, we are one of 18 CASA agencies. So there is CASA everywhere. It might be called something different in different states, but if you're sitting there thinking, I think my sister's neighbor in Oklahoma might do something like this, you're probably right. There is CASA across the country. We are all in Colorado. We are private 501c3s. So the organization that both Josefina and I work for is Advocates for Children, CASA. We work with children in Arapahoe, Douglas, Elbert, and Lincoln counties. That does not mean that our kids necessarily live in those 4 counties. In fact, a lot of them don't. But it means that their case originated in one of those 4 counties. So just a little background info to keep in mind throughout. Every year, Advocates for Children CASA advocates for between 700 and 800 kids from those 4 counties. And that is only about half of the kids that need us, which means, unfortunately, our wait list is as long as the list of children that we serve. So while we're a really large CASA organization, we've been around for 35 years. We have 300 something active volunteers at any given time. We have a large staff, our huge staff of 15, but that's bigger than a lot of other organizations. We've got a lot of resources, but we are still only meeting the needs of about half the kids in our community that need us. So anytime we can take advantage of an opportunity like this to spread the word and just get the information about CASA out there, we take it. And I'm really, really thankful to Nina for this opportunity, and also for those of you who are on this call to learn more. So next slide, please, Nina. Thank you. As Nina read in the bio of Advocates, our mission is to speak up for abused and neglected children through court-appointed special advocates. That is what CASA stands for. And like I mentioned, Advocates for Children CASA has been around a while, and we have adapted to some of the needs in our community. And so in addition to the core program that I'll talk about here in a second, we have 3 additional wraparound services. So Advocates for Children CASA actually has 4 programs and 4 different volunteer opportunities that are very hands-on working with our kids. So those of you that are familiar with CASA probably are most familiar with our core dependency and neglect CASA volunteer model. These are children who have been through abuse or neglect. They are now part of the child welfare system. So a lot of those kids are in foster care. They might be living with grandparents or in a different kind of kinship home. They might be in a group home. Some of our kids are working towards emancipation, but they all have an open dependency and neglect court case. Our CASA volunteers of those kiddos, they go through training, as does every volunteer opportunity with us, but those volunteers go through training, and then they're appointed to 1 kiddo or 1 sibling group at a time. They get to know these kids in every facet of their life. They're working, well, not necessarily working, but they're visiting the foster homes. They're getting to know what that home life looks like. They're working with the different teachers and school social workers and the different people at the school to figure out where this kid's education is, or where these children's education stands. They are oftentimes observing parenting time visits or sibling visits. Unfortunately, it's really, really common for our kids to be separated from their brothers and sisters while they're in foster care, or while they have an open case. So a lot of times our volunteers are either coordinating getting these kids together or helping facilitate in some way. These volunteers are just getting to know these kids in a way that the other professionals on the case simply don't have the time for. So like I said, and I'll mention it again because it's one of the most critical pieces about CASA, we work with 1 child or 1 sibling group at a time. The Department of Human Services caseworker might have 30, 40, 60 kids. The child's attorney might have 80 kids on their caseload. And while we're all here advocating for the best interest of this child, again, simply because of caseloads and numbers, advocates, CASA volunteers get to know these kids in a way that other folks don't necessarily have the opportunity to. So with all of that information that they're gathering, our volunteers are then reporting back to the court and the judges and the other parties that are making decisions for these kids. They're reporting back on what they feel is in this kid's best interest, what they're concerned about, what their recommendations are. I get asked a lot, well, how does that go over? You're a volunteer in a courtroom. We actually have a very positive relationship with the other parties, with the judge. Those folks know how well we know our kids. And so the recommendations, the concerns, the statements made by CASA during these cases, they really come with a lot of clout, and people, namely the decision makers on these cases, really respect where we're coming from. And Oftentimes it's the information given by a CASA volunteer that drives some of the direction of these cases. So that is our typical dependency and neglect court model. We have another, our typical dependency and neglect CASA volunteer model. We have another CASA volunteer that works in truancy cases. So the truancy courtroom is in a couple of our counties, and those are problem solving courts. So while those kids don't necessarily have a dependency and neglect court case, they might not be known to child welfare yet. We know that if kids are not getting to school or if they're perpetually late, that's an indicator that something bigger is going on in the home. So our CASA volunteers will work with children and families who have truancy cases to really problem solve and provide resources and figure out what's going on that's preventing this kid from being at school consistently. Again, those volunteers go through extensive training and are appointed to a family at a time. And then our last two opportunities are just slightly different. We have a tutoring program. Almost 100% of our kids are behind in their education. And that looks a lot of different ways, but a lot of our kids don't necessarily know where they're going to be sleeping this weekend or who they're going to be living with next month. And when you have those kind of fears and those kind of concerns, focusing on school is oftentimes not on their priority list. So our tutors work with children that are already in our programs or children who are referred to us through other community partners to meet them where they are, whether that's working on one subject at a time. I have a little friend here that's helping me present. One subject at a time or multiple subjects. That, again, looks a lot of different ways. And then last but not least, we have our legacy program, which is our teen program. It's a mentor model. So while not all of these kids have been in foster care or not all of these kids are adopted, a lot of them do have some kind of experience with child welfare. So oftentimes our mentors are working with them on independent living skills and self-sufficiency and filling out a job application and how to grocery shop for yourself and budgeting and all these skills that teenagers that are maybe in a more typical home environment would be getting support around. Our kids don't necessarily have those same opportunities. So before I move on, did anybody have any questions about any of those 4 programs? Cool. All right, next slide, please. Thank you. So what I had talked with Nina about, I really wanted to focus on a little bit of what our world looks like now for our kids. I would not be surprised if several of you on this call have seen the news stories, have read the articles about how significantly child welfare has been impacted by COVID. And I'm going to bring us down for just a second, but then I promise to bring us back up. Over the last few months, we have seen a huge decrease in the calls that are coming into the child abuse reporting hotline frankly, across the world, but I can speak to Colorado specifically. And of course, our 4 agencies, we have, or our 4 counties, we have counties that call volume is down as much as 50%. And historically, the months of April and May are 2 of the months that the most calls come into those hotlines. Teachers are sending kids home for the summer, and teachers are our #1 reporters of child abuse and neglect. So a lot of times teachers are calling in, they've maybe had their eye on a kiddo, they're seeing something or hearing something, they're worried about sending this kid home for the summer. So April and May, we get a lot of calls to the child abuse reporting hotline. That has been so opposite over these last few months. And unfortunately, we know that's not because child abuse or neglect has decreased. And in fact, we know that during times of stress, child abuse and neglect actually increases. So we're really, really concerned about the kids we don't know of. And frankly, it's going to be really hard to do anything about those kiddos until they return to school or until they're getting in front of adults more often than they are now. For the kids that we are working with or the cases that are opening up, that is a whole nother story. Unfortunately, those oftentimes are cases of pretty egregious physical abuse. Those are kids that are coming to the attention of maybe medical personnel, or they're being taken to the hospital. So those are pretty serious cases that are opening up. And regardless of why a case opened, a case is open for a reason, and our kids have been through so much already. I often say our kids have been through more than most adults will ever have to go through. And so while CASA is getting involved at a time where these kids have been removed from their dangerous situation, they're on the path to finding permanency. They're in this new chapter of their life, but they're still processing. They're still going through a lot. They're still trying to kind of wrap their minds around what their life looks like now. And of course, COVID has just been an extreme distraction and disruption for all of us, and our kids are no exception to that. One last piece that I wanted to mention, our kids strive and, or I should say thrive with routine and support systems. And not going to school has been a huge trigger for so many of our kids. Losing their contact with regular support systems has been really, really difficult. So I'll talk about CASA in a second, but we worked with one family over these last couple of months. It's a foster home. They have 2 kiddos. On top of these kids not going to school, they were then trying to convert all of their therapy appointments to be virtual. They were meeting with mom and dad. They were having parenting time visits online, meeting with the school social workers, meeting with their caseworker. Everything now is virtual. So on top of these 2 kids doing online school, this foster mom was coordinating over 20 visits a week of virtual appointments and therapy and whatever that looked like. So it was just wild. To make matters really, really challenging, they didn't have a laptop or a computer. They had no way to do these virtual visits. So luckily we were able to coordinate a donation of laptops, and this family then received a couple of those laptops and were able to participate in their appointments. But boy, it was life really, really hard there for a couple of weeks for them. So fast forwarding into kind of the positive piece of this and what we've seen that is good that has come over these last few months. Our volunteers are expected to see their kids on a weekly basis, and that did not change during COVID. While those visits looked different, specifically during the strict stay-at-home order, our volunteers didn't miss a beat. They were in contact on a weekly basis. They were seeing their kids via Zoom or FaceTime. We have awesome stories of volunteers going over to the kiddo's house and sitting on one side of the screen door while the kid is inside. We have some really cool, creative things that our volunteers have done to stay connected to their kids. I'll talk about that in just a second. But another thing we really, really focused on was supporting the family unit. And while that's something that we always want to do, we always want to support the family. We know that our kids are only going to be as strong as their family unit. We saw more than ever that our families were struggling with groceries, now having, especially for those families that have group homes or multiple kids in their home, their grocery bill was skyrocketing. Bills and utilities and rent was really difficult. We had so many parents that were furloughed or lost their job altogether. And I know a lot of us can relate to that. And a lot of us have those experiences on our personal networks right now too. And again, our families were no different, but a lot of these families don't necessarily have the resources that some of the rest of us do to kind of get by for the time being. So we really rallied our network and our donors and our supporters around helping out these families and providing gift cards and providing rent assistance. And another huge ask that we were hearing from our foster parents was, I am running out of ways to keep my kids entertained. I don't know what to do with them. So we tried to get creative and do some fun things and provide some fun resources and coloring books and activity books. And we worked with a Taekwondo studio to do free Taekwondo classes for our kiddos. So lots of different needs we heard of over the last few months. All of this can kind of be found on our website. We launched a CASA COVID Connections that was twofold. It was recruiting donations and asking our supporters to help provide groceries, bill assistance, activities, all of those things, in addition to sharing what was good that was happening. And so we have videos of volunteers having virtual story times with kids. We have an awesome video. It's definitely Josefina's and my favorite, of a adoption parade, a kiddo who had was adopted via Zoom, and then all of her classmates and our CASA staff and her volunteer and their family. Everybody surprised her with doing a fun little drive-by adoption parade at her house. So that was pretty cute. Anyways, all of those stories and videos and resources and just all the stuff can be found on our website. It's really easy to find the COVID Connections campaign. We'll keep it up there. We might, I don't know, we'll maybe play around with the name of it a little bit, but the stories are really inspiring and just go to show that there was a lot of good being done over the last few months. It was really, Nina, you asked me at the beginning kind of what keeps my passion going and what ignites me. And I've told Josefina and over, I have been blown away by what has happened over the last few months. And in a time that has just been so terribly sad for so many, our families and kids included, there have been just some really wonderful expressions of people helping others right now that I felt really grateful to be able to witness. So hopefully you're sitting over there, maybe wondering how you might be able to help some of these kiddos and families. And we have a little list up on the screen. Several of these, actually, I almost want to say the majority of these won't cost you $1, won't cost you a penny. They are ways you can help us spread our mission. The number one way we get both supporters, donors, and volunteers is word of mouth. So few different asks I have for you. Please follow us if you don't already. Please follow us on social media. Our handle is at @ADV4children. We are on both Facebook and Instagram. Just last week, actually, we launched a cool little mini web series of, it's from the volunteers' perspective, but it's talking about the kiddos and the families that they serve and what they're seeing and different ways that, different things that impact being a CASA volunteer, really. So that's been shared on our social. Lots of cool content. So I'd really love for you to please follow us if you don't already. We are also part of the King Soopers Community Rewards Program. So if you have either a King Soopers or a Kroger membership, you can go online, get into your account, and there is a community reward section. More information is on our website of exactly where to find this. But anyways, if you select us as your chosen charity, we get a kickback of every dollar you spend. Doesn't cost you a thing, but it's huge benefit to us. We get a couple $1,000s from it. So please sign up if you don't already have a charity. That's kind of the bummer. If you're already supporting another organization, they don't let you choose to, but that's okay. We just want everybody to know about this program. We do have a YouTube channel. If you just search Advocates for Children CASA, you're going to be able to find it. We have so many videos up there. The web series that I mentioned, the mission moments over the last few months, some different videos that we've produced for various events that we've had for the last few years. Really cool stuff. It's also a great place if you wanted to share anything about advocates. That's a great place to go and find a video that speaks to your heart and share that on your social, or send that to the person you're thinking of right now. Boy, that person would make a great CASA volunteer. We all have one of those people. Some of us have 15 of those people that we're working on. But our videos are a really great way to kind of explain what we do in a cool and different way. Of course, please consider becoming a CASA volunteer. I absolutely know this is not for everybody. It's hard. It's very hard work. It's also, I might be biased, but it's one of the most rewarding things you can do. And one of just the most incredible volunteer opportunities that is out there. So the timing has to be right. I cannot tell you how many volunteers we get that say, I've been thinking about doing this for years, but didn't make sense until now. So keep it in mind. Unfortunately, we will be here whenever you're ready. And I know that might not be tomorrow. We do have a volunteer training class starting in July, all online. We do 5 or 6 trainings a year. There will be future opportunities, but please do think about it if it's something that's speaking to you right now. Always looking for new community partners, whether that's to host a drive at your office for hygiene supplies, or if you wanted to host a little, like some kind of small mixer with accepting donations for advocates. That can look so many different ways, but if you have something in mind, I'd love to talk to you more. And then, of course, I would not be a good development director unless I told you that the way you could financially support us is simply by texting CASA to 26989. Super, super easy. I cannot tell you how far we can stretch $1, so please never think that I don't have much to give. It's not worth it. It is worth it. I promise you it's worth it, especially now when, we're facing more cases than we've ever had before. And B, our fundraising has been so significantly impacted over the last few months. Times are a lot different. So please do know that there's a lot of ways you can help us by spreading the word. I would love to talk to you all on an individual basis if you have some ideas or further questions. But that's kind of what I have. If we want to open it up a little bit, see if there's anything people are thinking about.
Yeah.
Oh, and my contact information. Yep.
Yeah. And I will send this out as well, but real quick, because we are getting that half hour, is there anything that you could share with the people on, or the people that will watch this right now? As you said, they're not in schools and they don't have a lot of people having eyes on the kids. So what are some key things that we can look for if we see children that could potentially be in that harmful situation, to be able to raise a flag before it winds up that they're in emergency care?
That's a really good question, Nina. Josefina, I'd love for you to jump in here. The immediate thing I'm thinking is don't ever question calling. I think that, I mean, I would like to tell everybody always, don't ever question making a referral. Don't ever question calling the child abuse reporting hotline. Even if you don't think it's anything major, you just don't know. We just don't know right now. There's so much going on behind closed doors. So many families that are struggling with, the unimaginable. I would say that just, we need the community to rally around our kids more than they've ever had to before. And I think the responsibility we all have is greater than it looked 4 months ago, because the mandated reporters just don't have access to these kids. Josefina, what would you add to that?
I would just say that if you have a gut feeling, the system is built so that not every call is going to immediately open a case. But the people that can and are trained to truly go into those situations and evaluate that situation will be able to have access to those children with just those simple little things that you see. If you see a kid who's unsupervised outside for multiple hours, sometimes we have parents who are stuck in a rut, depressed, or turning to drugs or alcohol. Those, even neglect is difficult to see sometimes, but abuse comes in many different forms. So if you have a gut instinct with a family, a community member, a church family member, whatever that is, a neighbor, please call. The right people will be in place to be able to evaluate that situation, but your gut is usually right. So I would say follow that.
Who is the best, or what is the best place? Is it 911? Is it calling you directly? Where would they report it to? Or we report it
I'm
to?
gonna pop the child abuse reporting hotline into the chat box. It's 1-844-CO4-KIDS. Of course, I don't know what those numbers are, but that's who you call. In Colorado, it's really easy. You don't have to worry about calling the county that you saw the abuse in, or you don't have to worry about any of that. It's a statewide child abuse reporting hotline. So that's the number you call. One other thing I thought is definitely worth mentioning here is, I would say not only keep an eye out for kids and when you're seeing kids potentially in dangerous situations, we really have to strengthen families right now too. And so if you have a neighbor, like if you're over, I'm in an apartment complex, so I feel like I can hear everything always, no matter who it is. If you're hearing a lot of yelling coming from the neighbor's house, or that this family is out of work right now, or their hours were cut, or just being good people and seeing what you can do to help, or providing a meal, or asking, hey, can I take your kiddo to the pool with my kids for the next 2 hours, or whatever that looks like. I mean, I think that there's a lot of ways we can just be kind of supporting one another right now and maybe that's not, it's not calling and making a referral, but it's on the preventative side of hoping that it doesn't get there in the first place. So a few different thoughts.
Can you let us know what the volunteer opportunities look like as far as the training goes, and overall time commitment, when people generally meet with their kids, that kind of thing?
Absolutely. Good question. I totally should have mentioned this. So our volunteer opportunities, well, like I said, we have 5 to 6 trainings a year. It's a 30-hour initial training. The last training, at least July's training, quite possibly the rest of the trainings throughout 2020 will be online trainings. It's a combination of our staff facilitating those trainings, as well as outside presenters and experts. So you'll learn not only about the different types of trauma and things that our kids have endured, but also how to advocate, how to work with the other professionals, what working with the school looks like. After you get through your initial training, you'll be sworn in, and we then appoint you to a case. So the initial training is a set schedule. We have both morning and evening sessions, and you do have to make one of those 2 sessions work for you. But then after you're sworn in, you meet with these kids and these families when it works for your schedule and when it works for the family. So that's the really incredible thing about being a volunteer. While it's such a heavy commitment, we do ask that you see them on a weekly basis. While it's such a heavy commitment, the flexibility is there. And so many of our volunteers they have families of their own. They have young kids, they have careers, they maybe travel for work here and there. I mean, they certainly have lives outside of CASA, but you make it work, because once you get involved, you can't imagine not being involved. Another piece to mention is that we do ask for an 18-month commitment. That's typically how long it takes for our cases to run their course and then close, and for our kids to be in a permanent home. We ask that our volunteers just stick with those kids for as long as it takes for their case to close. So that's typically 18 years. Of course, we have outliers in both directions, but that's kind of, yeah, that's the gist. And background checks. We do like you to pass background checks. If you are interested in getting involved, we have several CASA 101 sessions coming up that would dive a little bit further into the volunteer experience. And I'm happy to provide that information to you. Josefina and I can always do a phone call, one-off conversation, answer any other questions. But that 101 would be your next step. And we have those, I know we have one this Friday, and I kind of think we have one like every other week or something.
I would also add that I know, at least in the past, that they've really needed more men to be involved. So Jason and
Yes.
also, if y'all know anyone else, they really don't have a lot of men that volunteer in this situation. And also they do take couples. So if you are feeling like, gosh, I don't want to do this without my spouse or my significant other, that they absolutely, and that's also such a beautiful way for some children to see a different kind of love or family unit. So I recommend doing it together.
That's such a good point, Nina, both of those things. We love our co-CASA teams. We have couples that do this together. We've got a mother-son team right now. We've had siblings do it together. It's pretty cool. It's really, because there's such confidentiality with these cases, there's not a lot of people you can openly talk about your case with. You can talk to other CASA volunteers. So having your spouse or partner be a CASA volunteer is really helpful.
All right, any other questions about the CASA? Okay, then I'm going to end it with one good or fun question for Andrea so we can get to know her a little bit better. I'm curious, what's the one thing you're dying to do once these COVID-related restrictions are getting lifted?
My answer is embarrassingly basic. Josefina, I'm sure knows what I'm going to say, but I just really want to go get my nails done. And I know I probably could do that right now, but I'm not quite there yet. So I've got these dumb stick-on nails on that I feel like me and the other 5-year-olds in the world wear, but they're doing it for me right now. Even though I'm not seeing anybody, my nails need to be nice. So very basic answer. Got to get to the nail salon sometime, hopefully sometime soon.
It's those little things that we all take for granted.
Oh my gosh, I cannot wait.
Haircuts and everything else.
Yes.
All right. Well, Andrea and Josefina, thank you for jumping on and really enlightening us. I learned even more about CASA than I didn't know about. I will be posting this so that y'all know. I'll post this, and then I will also send it in an email so that y'all can share it with anyone else that you feel would be interested in advocating, now mentoring or tutoring, I didn't even realize, as an option, and just really being there for our kids. I also want to say that we do have more upcoming spotlights real quick to let y'all know. Wednesday, July 8th at 12:30 is with Nancy Saunders, who is my longtime and amazing massage therapist. But she's going to be sharing skills that she has learned, including fun and creative means of growing your business and maintaining a clientele. So it's also good for people that are possibly looking at different career options who maybe have been affected during this time. And then Wednesday, July 22nd at 12 p.m. with Homemade Colorado, another fantastic nonprofit who brings people together to complete construction projects and provide critical resources to nonprofit care providers who assist those in our community at high risk for homelessness, including young single mothers. And then I have openings in August. So if y'all know any other small businesses or nonprofits who need to be celebrated and highlighted, please connect them with me. And also, if you or anyone you know has questions or needs help with anything real estate or otherwise, whether it's refi or they want to remodel their kitchen or they've lost their job and they need some resources, I have a ton of them and I have a passion for helping. So please reach out or connect me with those people. And again, I thank y'all for the time, and I will follow this up with an email so you can have these details as well. So thank all of you for being on.
Thank you so much, Nina.
Have a great rest of your day.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.